Ever heard of someone trying to get out of a murder conviction with a declaratory judgment?
Sounds crazy, right?
It kind of is, and that's exactly what we're diving into today with Smith v. Gall. We've got excerpts from the court's opinion itself.
Yeah, get ready to unpack this one. It's a fascinating case.
It really is. So we're talking about this guy, Willie S. Smith, convicted of murder back in '95.
Yeah.
And not just any murder, aggravated murder.
Yeah, this was not some open and shut case either.
No, not at all.
Smith's case, right from the start, it was full of twists and turns.
Okay, so like what?
Well, take the initial charges, for instance.
Okay.
He's indicted for kidnapping, right?
Right.
And then they hit him with not one, not two, but 3 separate counts of aggravated murder, each one with different specifications. Oh, and on top of that, a weapons charge, too.
Whoa, they really threw the book at him.
Yeah, they were not messing around.
So what exactly did he end up being found guilty of after all that?
In the end,
Yeah.
the jury found Smith guilty of kidnapping
Okay.
and 1 count of aggravated murder.
Okay.
But, and this is important,
Right.
he was found not guilty of all those additional specifications.
Wait, hold on a sec. For those of us who aren't legal experts, what does that even mean? Specifications.
Good point. In Ohio law, think of specifications like,
Like add-ons.
yeah, exactly. They add another layer to a charge, right? It's like they don't change the guilty verdict itself, but they can really ramp up the punishment.
Ah. Okay.
Like in this case, if they had found Smith guilty of those firearms specifications or the felony murder specification,
Right.
he could have been looking at a whole lot more time.
So it's like the specifications are the how or the why of the crime, but even if they don't get you on those specifics, you're still guilty of the main charge.
Exactly. You got it.
And this, I think, is where Smith's case gets really interesting. He tries to use this whole not guilty on the specifications thing to his advantage later on. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. Knowing Smith, he was not going to give up that easily.
Huh. So what did he do?
Get this cute, the appeal montage. And I'm not talking about just one appeal. He filed 5. Between 97 and 2018, this guy argued everything under the sun.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Insufficient evidence.
Right.
Ineffective counsel, you name it, he tried it.
Wow.
He even tried to claim that because the jury said not guilty on the specifications, that somehow invalidated the whole aggravated murder conviction.
Okay, I get that he was trying every trick in the book.
Right.
But legally speaking, why would the not guilty verdict on the specifications affect his murder conviction?
That's where it gets tricky. See, the Ohio Court of Appeals, they were very, very clear on this. A finding on a specification guilty or not guilty, it doesn't change the guilty finding on the main charge.
Interesting.
They're separate things.
Right.
They even cited legal precedent to back this up.
Which was?
State v. Perryman. It basically says what I just said. The finding on a specification doesn't change the guilty finding on the main charge.
So all those appeals, they basically failed.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly Smith, he is a persistent guy. Which brings us to 2022, I believe, and this whole declaratory judgment thing. Can you explain what that is and what he was hoping to achieve?
So picture this. A declaratory judgment is basically like you're asking the court to clarify the law, or a party's rights in a specific situation. It's like instead of challenging the game itself, you're asking for a rule book interpretation.
Okay, so it's not about new evidence or anything like that.
No.
It's more about arguing about how the existing rules should be interpreted.
You got it. You're getting it. And here's the kicker.
Okay.
It's usually about things like, contracts or property disputes, stuff like that.
Right.
It's not really about challenging criminal convictions.
So kind of a long shot, to say the least.
Definitely a long shot.
What exactly was Smith's argument here with this declaratory judgment?
Okay, so get this. He was trying to say that the judges in his criminal case, way back when, they acted outside of their authority.
Oh.
By upholding his aggravated murder conviction, even though he was found not guilty of those specifications.
Wait, so instead of challenging the evidence, he's challenging the judges themselves?
Essentially, yeah.
That is a bold move.
Very bold.
So what did he actually want the court to do? What was he asking for?
He wanted them to declare that original sentencing invalid.
Really?
Yeah, because in his opinion, the judges back then, they messed up.
They messed up how?
Interpreting the jury's verdict. Specifically, he wanted them to say that his sentencing document, that official judgment, insufficient for him to be held criminally liable.
It sounds like a pretty big ask.
It was.
So did this declaratory judgment gambit actually work?
What did the court say?
Yeah, what did the court say?
Well, to answer your question, you probably won't be surprised to hear this didn't exactly go Smith's way.
Yeah, I'm going to guess the appeals court wasn't too sympathetic to this strategy.
Not really, no. But the reasons why are really important. This is where we get into some pretty crucial legal concepts.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this a little bit.
So the trial court, they dismissed Smith's complaint pretty swiftly, actually, basically saying, look, this is not the way to try and overturn a criminal conviction. And
so they weren't going to let him retry this case over and over.
Right, exactly. You've got it. You can't just retry the same case endlessly hoping for a different result.
Right.
And that's a very simplified way of putting it. But
sure.
The legal term for that is it's called res judicata. It basically means like it's already been decided.
Right.
We're done here. And they also bring up this concept of judicial immunity.
Right, because you can't just sue a judge because you don't like their ruling.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And judicial immunity, it protects judges from being sued for actions they take in their official capacity, right?
Yep.
It ensures that they can make decisions, based on the law,
right,
without fear of being personally liable.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. But going back to Smith's argument for a second, he kept bringing up those specifications.
Right.
Was there any legal basis for him to be convicted of aggravated murder without them? Because, I mean, the jury found him not guilty of the specifics.
That's the thing. The court had addressed that question in his very first appeal, like back in 97. Remember State v. Perryman? We talked about that earlier.
Right.
Which basically says what?
That it doesn't matter.
That it doesn't matter. That a finding on a specification, whether it's guilty or not guilty, does not change a guilty finding on the main charge. They are separate things.
Huh.
And the Ohio Court of Appeals, they were very consistent on this point.
Wow. So, to be clear, Smith was banking on a technicality that didn't actually exist.
Yeah, you could say that.
Wow.
It's like he was arguing that, being found not guilty of the specific circumstances of the murder, right? That like the how, so to speak, somehow meant he wasn't guilty of the murder itself.
Right.
And the court's like, nah, we're not buying it. So remember, Smith appealed the dismissal.
Of course he did.
Right. So it went up to the Ohio Court of Appeals.
To settle it once and for all.
Oh. And they ultimately upheld the lower court's decision.
Okay.
They ruled that Smith's claims were barred by res judicata, that whole it's already been decided thing we talked about.
Talk about deja vu for those judges.
Right. It really goes to show, though, how persistent this guy was. He was absolutely convinced that he had a winning argument. But, in the eyes of the court, he was trying to relitigate the same case using a different legal strategy, which ultimately didn't work.
So what can we take away from all of this? What are the key takeaways from Smith v. Gall? Mm-hmm. What makes this more than just some guy trying to game the system to get out of jail?
That's a great question. On the surface, I mean, it might seem pretty straightforward, but when you really connect this back to the bigger picture, it highlights some very, very important aspects of our legal system.
Like what?
It really does make you think about that balance, between respecting the finality of legal judgments, like we've been talking about, right? And then on the other hand, making sure that justice is really, truly served.
Yeah, because what happens in those rare cases where, like, years down the line, some new evidence comes to light that could actually exonerate someone. Yeah. I mean, it's not unheard of.
Exactly. And think about all the advancements in DNA technology.
Right.
We've seen so many people who were convicted, back before DNA testing was even a thing. And then years later, boom, DNA evidence emerges that proves they were innocent the whole time.
It makes you wonder.
Yeah, it really does. At what point does that principle of finality, that need for closure, outweigh the possibility, even if it's a slim possibility, that a wrongful conviction is just going to stand?
Yeah. It's a tough question. Like, is there ever a statute of limitations on justice? I mean, I don't know. If you were wrongly imprisoned, wouldn't you want every opportunity to clear your name, no matter how much time had passed?
Absolutely. 100%. And these are questions with no easy answers. It's really, I don't know, it gets at the core of our legal system and what we value most as a society, fairness, due process, and ultimately that pursuit of truth.
Definitely. So Smith v. Gall, maybe it wasn't the most groundbreaking case in legal history.
Right.
Didn't rewrite the rule book or anything like that, but it does offer a really interesting look into like the complexities of the law, wouldn't you say?
100%. It reminds us that the law isn't always about, clear-cut right and wrong.
Right.
It's about, interpreting these legal principles,
Right.
navigating precedent, and then trying to apply these things to often very messy situations.
It's a good reminder that the legal system, it's full of these twists and turns.
Oh, yeah.
What seems like an open and shut case, at first glance,
Right.
can just reveal like layers of complexity when you really start to examine it.
Exactly. And that's why cases like Smith v. Gall, I think, while they may not be, destined for law textbooks or anything,
Right.
they're still important. They spark those really important conversations
They do.
about the law, its limits, and how we ensure that, in the end, justice is served.
Well said. So to our listeners, the next time you find yourself, maybe reading about a legal case and it seems, pretty straightforward, remember Willie S. Smith. Remember his decades-long fight?
Right.
And remember, there just might be more to the story than meets the eye.
Always. There always is.
That's it for today's deep dive, everyone. Until next time.